So let's start, Mike. You have recently written a really interesting article which has been published in AgilePMO. You can download the edition. You can read the article. The article is in English, and you mentioned there some examples of good leaders who manage the crisis situations well. So if you can tell us, what do they have in common? Is it something different they have to other leaders?
Well, it must be.
Sorry.
If you look around the world, you will see that some countries have managed the current pandemic better than others. And that's better in the sense of impact on health, public health, but also on the economy and society as well. So it's quite a complex problem. And I decided this is too good an opportunity to miss. So, by looking at the newspapers and looking at the news reports to see who was doing this well and who was doing this not so well. Now, of course, I choose the newspapers that I read. So I tend to read newspapers that reflect my values and beliefs. Which means I get a particular view of the world. So one of the things I've tried to do is to read newspapers and look for other news sources that are coming from a different place from where I am. Whether you're looking at right-wing or left-wing newspapers or whatever, to get a different view on how things are. Now, one of the things that's come through is that there are some leaders who have done very well. The obvious example being in New Zealand, where Jacinda Ardern, a female leader, and that may not be a coincidence. Her country managed the pandemic so far very well. They've kept the number of cases down to a very small number, the number of deaths down to a very small number. And although it's not all plain sailing, and they are seeing some signs of the pandemic coming back, they've done a good job. And how did they do that? One of the things that if you look in the leadership material dealing with crisis, one of the things that good leaders do is they notice when something is happening. So as human beings, we tend to be optimists. We tend to hope for the best. So when we start to see something happening that's going to cause us to have to change, we have a tendency to think it's going to be okay, and therefore not to act. Now, what some leaders do, and what Jacinda Ardern did, she saw that very early on. So whereas New Zealand locked down very quickly and very hard, other countries, my own in the UK included, took a less aggressive view and were trying to avoid having to take drastic action. And the consequence of that is that when you do have to take it, it's not as effective, and the problem becomes worse. So one of the things that I found through reading the reports and the literature around this is that there's a quality of a leader that is perhaps courage, the willingness to say, this looks like it could be really bad, so I'm going to do something, and I'm going to do it in the knowledge that I may actually be acting too hard, and if I am, I would accept the consequences, but if I'm not wrong, then we are going to have a better chance of managing it. So courage, empathy with the people. Jacinda is a very good communicator. Her messages are clear, direct, and people understand them. And she engages people so they want to follow what she's doing. So if you think about that, there's qualities of empathy, there's qualities of courage, there's qualities of decision making, there's qualities that surround her with a good team. All of these things come together to make a good leader. You may have your own views. All of us have been affected by what's going on at the moment, and we can certainly look at examples like in the UK and in the US where the leadership there has been, shall we say, not as good as elsewhere, in that the messaging has been complex, the leadership behaviours. When you're a leader, people will do what you do. So if you don't commit to certain actions, then you can't expect others to follow. I think that's all I want to say at the moment. But the message you get, it's the personal qualities of the leader, the way they behave, but there are some key messages there around being very clear and concise. And if you don't know, being very clear that you don't know, and be very clear that we're going to take some chances, and if it doesn't work, we will try something else.
Thank you, Mike.